Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Vallen, and this is Guild Wars 2, a preview to Path of Fire. Today we're covering the Guardian, or the new Elite Specialization called the Firebrand. So those that are familiar with Guild Wars 2 are going to be familiar with the character information screen. As you can see, this is a PvP setup. They've given us a bunch of default information, and this is a demonstration weekend, so it's a very limited time, and there are some bugs currently in play. Things that you should know. Even if I remove parts of armor, you'll notice that my stats do not change, though, I put it back on and it'll go back. Even if I change the stats and items I currently have equipped, nothing is actually going to be changed in this, so take it as you will. We started off with a certain set of armor, and that's pretty much what we're going to be stuck with. So the numbers and everything may also be skewed by all the people that are around, because everyone is running around trying to test this stuff out. Can't say I blame them, because it's really exciting time. Now, with that in mind, you also should know a couple other things, and that is, as this is the first time that there have been more than one elite specialization available, you cannot have more than one at a time. So for instance, if I go over to change my Radiance abilities here, I cannot actually choose Dragon Hunter as well. But if I choose the Firebrand one, I can switch that out with Dragon Hunter, and therefore choose that, or go back to non-standard Elite specs, and so on. Now, I'm going to do a tiny bit of theory crafting during this, but the basic idea with the Firebrand that I am seeing at a first glance is that there is a very heavy focus on a few things, and that is, one, being fire, and two, being your ability to apply quickness to yourself and or friends or allies. You have quite a bit of versatility in your new kit with the Firebrand, as it changes your virtues into tomes now, of similar name: Justice, Resolve, and Courage, respectively, as similar to the previous other ones. Now, I'm currently going to leave Honor and Radiance on here with no stats selected. It will give me a few basic things like an increased Vigor possibility, or I might apply Blindness or something of that nature, but it shouldn't be anything that's of too much of an effect if I'm using any of these abilities. Now, upon choosing Firebrand, you immediately gain access to, of course, the tomes, which now are these floating pages, as you saw earlier, floating around your avatar, and so on. You therefore cast this ability, and you get these floating pages, which it's a really wonderful thing, but you also don't have any weapons in your hands. The reason being, your entire skill bar is changed, at least on the left side, so you don't have any weapons or shields or anything like that equipped anymore. It's just these magical pages. You're basically a magical storyteller at this point, and you can have a very offensive fire-driven set with the Tome of Justice. You can have a very healing effect with the Tome of Resolve. In this case, you'll have lots of different heals available, or your Tome of Courage, which will give you a lot of just defensive abilities and a little bit of control on the battlefield. Of course, you can always unequip any of them at any time, but you will have increasing amounts of recharge, which can be adjusted according to your skill selection. Now, also by choosing Firebrand, you'll gain the ability to use an axe. If you notice here, I'm currently wielding a pearl axe and, of course, as appropriate, a torch, but the torch is just secondary. In this case, your axe will gain you quite a bit of versatility in melee range. Now, previously, there was a lot of favoritism, at least by myself, for a solo sword, as well as an offhand or a great sword for a Guardian, because they can be quite a lot of fun. Now, the advantages that I'm currently seeing for the axe, which is what I'm going to cover first, is that your axe is not a standard axe. If you attack with it, let's choose an enemy here and attack, you'll see I'm hitting it twice each time that I attack with the axe, and then this giant magical axe that also appears, which therefore means that it is currently hitting 2 times for every 1 that you typically would see from other weapons. For instance, I have a sword. You'll do an attack, and then a triple attack at the end. This, in turn, will do 2 attacks, 2 attacks, and 2 attacks. So effectively, if you have something that applies abilities or conditions, the more often you attack, this is going to be a very fast way of doing so, which is something that a Guardian has been lacking, is a speed weapon of sorts. But there are drawbacks to it. Obviously, with something like a sword, you'd have the ability to teleport to your target, potentially gap close. In this case, you actually have to be able to have gotten to your target and then perhaps apply a cripple. The reason I say perhaps is because your second ability, Symbol of Vengeance, is a symbol which is standard on most of the weapons that a Guardian could apply, in this case a Firebrand. Now if I place this down, you do see it does take a bit of time in order for it to actually apply, though. You have a good second and a quarter for it to go out there, and it will affect a cripple and a bleeding. So you're actually getting a lot of fire damage from your core, or at least bleeding from both of these abilities. And then, of course, you're gaining your regular fire burning passive from your Justice effect over here. Now, your last one that I'm going to talk about, and of course this one is a combo field. You can't forget the combo fields being good for, just all-around good stuff. But if I get into Blazing Edge, you conjure a magical axe to rake your enemies towards you, which is very interesting because therefore you can feasibly have a little bit of control on this, but it's only a range of 600. So if I go near this group, and I've already I set my symbol on the ground, I can then also cast this and bring my enemies towards me. Now, of course, that was quite a distance. I wasn't actually aiming at this group. Let me target these guys, and we'll redo that. And you'll see it does say a number of targets, 3. So if I drop that symbol on the ground, and then I choose to pull 3 guys close by, that's a good way of getting them into your area effect so that you can then start cleaving them as well, because your core cleave of your axe actually affects 3 targets as well. So you can double hit 3 targets, you can drag 3 targets, and you can drop a symbol on the ground so that while you're hitting those targets, if they're not already dead, they will be prevented from escaping, and you can continue to just cleave them down. It's a very strong effect. It can have its disadvantages, though. If I attack a golem, now I realize that there are other people already attacking this. I have spent some time testing this around. If I go with a lot of fire effects and just single attack with my Sword of Wrath, and I've got my normal Justice effect going on, I can apply some burning and maintain about a stack or 2 of burning on a regular basis. In this case, if I attack this heavy golem with my sword, you'll see that I am currently keeping applied about 2 stacks of burning, maybe get it up to 3, it drops back down to 2 again, so you're keeping a steady number of burning going on, depending on your sword attacks, of course, which are going to change as you attack. Now, if you switch over to your axe, and then you decide to attack, you'll notice that you've got your bleeding, of course, and then your burning stacks will slowly start increasing over time, up around 5 or 6. And depending on how you stat increase that, you can always increase it further so that or decrease that so that you can with not these, but virtues. If you decide to switch to virtues, you have the ability to actually decrease the how often it happens with Tome of Justice. And then, of course, you have other abilities that can further enhance that too. But let's get into those abilities. Now that I've told you about the axe, I've told you a little bit about the Firebrand itself changing things into tomes, which we can cover those at the end here. But let's get into some of the other stuff. Now, of course, you've given those abilities. Next, you've got the power to enhance your axe a little further with a tiny bit more of condition damage, which this is a very condition-heavy style, is what it prefers, but you don't necessarily have to go that way. And that's with more bleeding and a daze at the end there, which is pretty good. So it inflicts bleeding, and when you place that symbol down on the ground, you have at the last pulse, because of course it pulses, I believe, was it 4 times? 5 times. On the last pulse, it will also toss out a daze. So if you have somebody with a big wind-up skill or something, or there are a bunch of enemies, it will kind of, interrupt them, which could be useful. And of course, chance on hit to inflict the bleeding is 33% for an additional bleed. Now, that's rather kind of mundane in my eyes, because it's respective to a specific skill, and then it has a potential add-in of a very mild bleed. But that is something to stack with burning instead of just enhancing the burning itself. Now you go with Liberator's Vow here. Grant allies quickness when you use your heal skill. The heal skill, I should say, you've got a lot of mantras which are added in from the Firebrand, and they can be extremely valuable and useful. And they're very different from your traditional skills. I will actually go into those in a moment. So with this one, quickness, skills and actions are faster, of course. So it'll make you attack faster, and your skills will activate faster. It's a very useful skill in combat, making your character effectively hyperspeed. And it can affect your allies as well, up to 5 of them nearby. So this is where you start getting into a little bit more of the enhancing your group, less of the damage that you might cause, though it will increase your attack speed. And it does a small radius. So if you've got a spread out group, it's not going to be good, but it might come in very valuable for a raid. And with that, we're just going to cover this last one, and then I'm going to go over mantras. Last one here, your virtues gain additional pages, and that is these here, which it's actually tomes, not virtues. But they will gain 3 more pages. When you choose one of them, you will gain 5 uses of them before they expire, if you don't already drop the tome and stow it back into your bag by itself. So let's go over a little bit more of the skills before we actually press on too deep into the potential strategy. In this case, we're going to go over some of the mantras. Alright, so now you can see that I have my mantras down here. You have a new healing skill, you have 4 new mantras, and you have a new mantra elite skill. Mantras are the new style of skill for your Firebrand, and they're rather interesting. They're different, as I mentioned before, in that each one of them, even though it does say prepare on this one, at the first word, mantra, prepare, prepare. This one says recite, even though it actually means prepare. Command, whoops, that wasn't actually one of the ones I wanted. There we go, we'll choose that. And then we've got another one that of course is going to say prepare as well, or echo remnants. Each one of them actually has a preparation needing, even though they don't or may not say it. In this case, I'm going to choose these, and you'll see what I mean when I choose this healing skill. The Mantra of Solace. You prepare to heal yourself and grant allies Aegis. Now, in this case, I click it. It will take me a good 2 3/4 seconds before that mantra is actually ready to be used. But now it is highlighted, and I have a glow about my character, just a little bit because I pulled out that torch. But if I choose any of the other mantras as well, it's a similar effect. The skill then changes. I get a charge count at the bottom here. Not sure if you can quite see that, but I'll try and zoom in so that that can be easier to see. You can then keep preparing each one of these mantras. And there you go. You've got each one of them, including your elite, which will also take a little bit of time to prepare. And once prepared, even after I drop my weapons, you then have up to 3 charges of each of these, unless you otherwise modify them. And with those charges, you can then cast them for just 1 second, doing just about anything. I've been able to be tumbling, I've been able to be attacking, and so on. It just takes a second of time in order for these to actually take effect. Now in this case, you would be able to do Restoring Reprieve. Not the last one, it's the one in the middle, where you gain health, which is about 1500 self-heal in this case, to you and allies in front of you. So it's kind of a cone effect. Number of targeted allies, 5. And then you'll be able to cast it. So cast that, you saw it had like a little blue area, like so, and that was 2 pulses. Now on the final charge, each mantra will have a final charge ability. That is where, in this case, I'll gain significant health. I'll gain double the amount from the previous one, if not a little bit more. Then I also will apply an Aegis effect, which can also be beneficial to trigger further bonuses. And in this case, I cast that, and it would give me Aegis if I didn't already have it. So that's just an added benefit. In this case, I kept on casting it. If you actually wait, you have a certain number of charge recovery, 12 seconds. So every 12 seconds that you do not use this skill, it will recharge one of its charges. So in this case, let's cast this one. This one here, once I prepared it, it will unleash a wave of purging fire in front of me. It'll do a little bit of damage, big chunk of fire on up to 5 targets, and of course it has 15 seconds. But you'll notice it's already back up to 3 charges. I'll cast it again, And again, it has one charge left, so it's on its flame surge, the final one. But if I just wait, it will eventually start recovering. And you can see that that is actually represented by the outline on the skill. You can see this little white line going around the outside edge. It's currently going all the way around it until it finally will recharge and give you another ability. So if you're really smart about it, you don't want to use it so that it will actually, if I were to cast this once, twice, 3 times, it uses it up and then follows the Mantra of Flame's recharge ability. You can feasibly just kind of try and space it out, or if you're desperate enough, you can use these if you need to. So you can be very, cautious, or just all-out splurge these if you need them. If you just need to finish off that enemy or give your team that last pulse, and you think you can make it another like 20, 30 seconds before your next one, then you should be good to go. But otherwise, you have a good like 25-second recharge on average for almost all these ones. Even your Elite is only 40-second recharge, but it of course has its charge time as well. So let's get into some of the other ones. This one is more focused on burning. Of course, it's called the Mantra of Flame, where you unleash a wave of purging fire in front of you. It does damage, and then as its final charge, it will do even more damage. So it's not really worth doing that unless you're going to unless you really want that extra pulse. But or you have a way of refreshing this or something of that nature. Otherwise, it's just good for just constantly popping out a couple extra shots every 15 seconds. You could do another burning. If you really want to initiate with a few burns, or you think that it will just finish off an entire group quickly, you could always do that. And of course, I have to replenish this one because I already used it, but then I can always do in front of me in a cone, which tends to be a very common thing with the mantras nowadays, is that, of course, with the healing, also a cone, but you can use it for yourself and to help others. Much better in my opinion because, well, I'll show you later on when we get into some of the other information besides the skills. Now, Mantra of Potence. This one here, once again, does a cone effect in the front, but it will also give you quickness and might, which, as you know, gives you much more damage and your skills will recharge faster. Always something good to have. This one here is going to be very key, and I will definitely go over that one shortly. And of course, you've got your Mantra of Truth, which will just pulse out a whole bunch of conditions that don't do damage. It does a little bit of damage in itself, as you can see here, but the cripple, weakness, blindness, so it has a lot of functionality for that may also benefit others that could take advantage of those abilities. But overall, there is one other one that I'd like to show you, and that is Opening Passage. Opening Passage isn't quite as powerful in my opinion. It's more just a passive heal. You can give regeneration and remove conditions every 12 seconds to your group, or you can always pulse it out if you just need those extra heals because someone's going to go down, or your group is getting a whole bunch of needs a bunch of conditions. Instead of just removed, you can convert them into boons, so it could potentially give you a lot more effect. And of course, it will also work in a cone effect. So once again, you're going to want to be kind of behind your party. So some of these can be supportive in some ways where you're going to want to be behind people, or you can use them if you're standing back slightly from the target and therefore can buff a group that is all just standing on a target. So it's all a matter of positioning with a lot of the mantras, as well as preparation and not overusing them. Now, if you go into the Elite, the Mantra of Liberation, echo remnants of an ancient pamphlet from Vabi that urged Elonians to freedom. So each one of these, like I said before, is kind of an echo of the ancient information. But, and you've got your tomes that tell stories. In this case, you give stability and retaliation, which of course retaliation will reflect damage back to its source. A very key ability. It often will help destroy targets that are good damage pulsers at you, as well as the stability will just, if anything, help break your stun effects, help keep you standing, help keep it so that you are not just being knocked off of edges or always being stun locked. Very important information. You can use this, as before, up to 3 times. So it also has an additional ability of swiftness as your final pulse, so you can get that little boost of movement speed if you just need it to retreat because you don't think that you're going to be able to make it. And thankfully, it has a very low recharge time. So if you do accidentally pump that third pulse out before you're able to recharge it, then you still should be able to recover from it. Now we'll briefly go over each of the tomes and those abilities, and then we'll go into the skills themselves. So the Tome of Justice. Cast this one and you instantly gain a lot of abilities, all dealing pretty much with fire. Your Chapter 1 Searing spell is going to allow you to, each one, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, 4, and, of course, the epilogue. You're going to have, you're a magical storyteller, as I mentioned. So this does damage in a range of 600, as you see here, in a cone. That's right. And then you've got your Igniting Burst, ignite the air around you, and an Expanding Burst. This one's a little different. You actually launch out a flame burst from you, and it does it in a decent radius, especially if you're in a melee range with your axe from before. It also will do weakness on your enemy, which is very important if you're trying to survive and prevent them from escaping. But you also have a heated vortex that you can target instead. So, which instead of just casting it yourself, though you could have it self-cast, you could actually cast it in an area. And it will do a pull effect on those targets. So if I actually jump down here and use it on these guys here, you'll see that it should pull several of them together. There we go, and they were all pulled together. On top of that, you've got your Scorched Aftermath, which will add in bleeding and burning, pulsing in a area. So you have a very large area that you're going to be doing this massive damage in. It does 5 quick pulses, and it's done. But it will add in a ton of damage in there. It's very effective. And then, of course, your last one I'll go into in a moment because I was not able to get that one. Let's switch my Elite and refresh that. There we go. Your last one. Recall the memory of fallen heroes. Ashes of the Just. This is something that lasts on your allies for a short time. Your next strike burns with justice, so therefore you will inflict a burning effect, and it will stay with you for a short amount of time. You notice it has 3 abilities, and it lasts for about 8 seconds. So if you're therefore using that, switching off, or using your, current of attacks, it should be able to apply an extra burning effect, and it can be very useful for supporting your friends. Now if we switch over to the Tome of Resolve, you can see that it's more healing effect, and therefore it can be useful. I don't think that it can be strongly relied upon because most of the rest of the Guardian's kit, whether it be Firebrand or otherwise, is not typically focused on healing. So I don't know that they'd be able to out-heal some of the more focused healer classes in a raid or something, but it could still be useful. And of course you can do healing, number of targets 5, focus that one, and it shoots it in a cone, as most things do, and I'm being targeted by an elementalist, which is not what I wanted. Then you've got your Radiant Recovery, which will do condition removal and healing per conditions removed. So if you cast that, you do this little dance, and you noticed I healed nothing because I didn't have any conditions. So it's very situational. Then you've got your Azure Sun, which is going to give you boons, vigor, regeneration, swiftness in an area that you choose. So you could actually choose to target friendlies in this case and give everybody a bunch of a bonus, plus a very minor benefit. You've got your Shining River, which releases a torrent of pages, giving swiftness in a large area, of course, allowing people just that faster movement. And then, of course, your Epilogue, which is going to bestow upon you Eternal Oasis for 8 seconds, which increases your healing effectiveness. So if you're going to use a bunch of these abilities in here, specifically your healing abilities, then I recommend you start with Eternal Oasis, just so you can benefit yourself and others in that area before you start using it. Now, the last one here, the Tome of Courage, is going to allow you a lot more control. It will further give you stability and swiftness, which is going to allow you to move around faster and resist being controlled by, of course, knockback, pulled, launched, stunned, dazed, etc. And of course, you've got your Daring Challenge. This allows the Guardian actually a taunt skill, strangely. Not expecting to see that on here, but it does allow you to do that, and a little bit of damage, but at a very short radius. So you're going to want to use this and then switch off immediately, or immediately start using other skills once you have that taunt to maintain it. Now, your Valiant Bulwark is going to allow you to reflect missiles in an area that you choose, surprisingly. It allows you to do so at a range of 900, which is really good. So I can drop that down on that Mesmer and prevent him from basically encasing him so that he can't shoot any kind of missiles in that area. I'm being shot at right now, so I'm just going to fly away. Now, on top of that, we have Stalwart Stand. This one here will give you resistance. So if you have conditions currently on you, they're ineffective for, well, it says 1 second, but it does pulse for 4 seconds. So it's effectively good for 4 seconds worth, and it will constantly keep pulsing. So it should stop you from taking heavy damage from your incoming attacks and conditions, or not attacks really, but the conditions on you. And it also performs a large area combo field for light. And your last one, Unbroken Lines. Recalling the memory of heroes past, enchant nearby allies with formidable defenses giving protection, retaliation, stability, and of course Unbroken Lines, which increases their toughness by 300. And this is your allies. It's a radius effect. So keep in mind it's not just you, but it should allow you to therefore increase toughness and perhaps help maintain that taunt that you're trying to do in the first place. It's entirely situational though. So now that we've actually gone through those, some of these might actually make a little bit more sense with their focus on quickness as well as flame. Because of course you have your different Tome of Justice, which is going to really focus on burning. You already saw most of the burning effects, but there are a lot of quickness buffs before you notice Liberator's Vow. Quickness, skills and actions are faster, is granted when you use your heal skill. And if you use your heal skill every, I don't know, let's say 12 seconds, because that's the charge recovery, that's going to allow you to further add more quickness. 3 seconds of it each time that you do this. So every 12 seconds you can add 3. This is before any kind of bonuses or boon lengthening effects or anything of that nature, plus other things you might be able to stack on there. This can be very, very strong. Next, we've got Swift Scholar. Equipping or stowing a virtue grants you quickness. So just by clicking on either of these ones, of course they will start, taking a little bit of time, but then I gain quickness just by doing so, which of course is being covered up by this screen, but it was there at the top. Let's click this other one. You should see there's the quickness. It then activates a little bit faster because I have quickness being cast on me. So therefore using these is going to be even faster. Now the final charge of your mantra skills, Inflict Immobilize for weighty terms. This one's just good for adding in an extra Immobilize if you're constantly finishing off your mantras instead of trying to wait for the recharge. So it can be useful. And because of that, it also will reduce the recharge of those. So if you're one of those that just can't hold back from using the mantra up completely, this might be a good one for you. But all in all, I would say it's not really worthwhile because you're supposed to be just occasionally using these every 12 to 15 seconds to give the best benefits. Moving on from that though, Stalwart Speed. This one here is very important. When you grant Aegis or Stability, grant Quickness. This is very, very strong because if you remember, your Courage Virtue or Tome will gain you Aegis periodically. This, combined with that, is just going to be very, very good. There are a few other skills that you could potentially use to grant yourself further Aegis castings and therefore more quickness. On top of that, legendary lore. Your tome skills gain bonuses from scribbling in the margins by ancient bards. So this will enhance your existing virtues, or tomes in this case, with further effects. More burning, more regen, and more blocking. So it's just really, really good. You definitely want some of these stacking abilities. I mean, it's entirely up to you how you want to do it, but I'm just giving you some ideas. Then you've got your Stoic Demeanor, inflicting slow on foes you disable or immobilize. So anytime that you disable or immobilize them, it will inflict that. Now there are, of course, abilities like Daze, which would actually prevent them from moving around, and therefore inflict this slow on there. There may be other things as well that you could potentially use. I'm just showing this one to you briefly. But if you are also going with Quickfire, this will gain you Ashes of the Just, which was that ability that will grant a big burn on your foe, as you see here, if you are doing this. And this one can affect multiple targets. It's granting quickness to an ally also grants Ashes of the Just, so therefore tons more damage can be given because of how often quickness can be given with your current setup. On top of some of your mantras, plus some of your specialization abilities, it can be very strong. And then, of course, your Lore Master. Tome skills gain reduced recharge, which means all of these will then be recharging 33% faster. It was the actual skills themselves for the tomes. It is not the tome itself. It's the skills on the tome list. But you're also, while you're in this area and you've got your tome being used, it will allow the passives to be effective while on cooldown. So if I finish using that tome skill, I then still can benefit from its passive burning effects while it's recharging, and I don't need to worry about the fact that I just used it. I hope you enjoyed this video today on the Firebrand, previously known as the Guardian, for the new expansion of Guild Wars 2 Path of Fire. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, folks, I'll see ya.